talking prospects. We're going to be talking a lot of different guys. I don't think it's any secret who's going to be at the top of the list, seeing as how I put it in the title. But just to start things off, we do a prospect pyramid, mostly because I think it's stupid to argue, well, I think this guy's number 2 and this guy's number 3. There's a bunch of prospects that are good that are in the same tier of prospect, whether you rank them 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be. So why not put them in a tiered pyramid of like, here's this level of prospects tier by tier, so we can talk about them that way instead of wasting time arguing semantics over a number next to their name. Generally speaking, just makes more sense. Eric, I'm curious, because I got this idea years and years and years ago. Steve Dangle did a prospect pyramid for the Leafs, and me and him and a bunch of other guys do it on YouTube ever since. How do organizations look at their prospect pools? Do they have kind of like a tiered system like that, or do they really dig in and number it out?
Well, you can do both. I mean, you can do whatever you want, numbers, or I like to just look at it like the way you just mentioned it, right? You know, a little pyramid, a little visualization of where each and every guy's at. And I can promise you that, let's say that the pyramid that we have, let's say CMAX has that one in the organization. It won't look the same 4 months from now, won't look the same 6 months from now, and for all the reasons, right? There's plateaus. It's rookie camp, then there's training camp, then the start of the respective seasons, wherever you end up. Are you in the American League? Are you in your junior team? Or did you make the NHL? I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing is some guys move at turtle pace. They really do. And then some guys move like rabbits, right? I mean, they just go. You know what I mean? They go, they climb up that ladder, from 2-3 months. And as a player, you want to do that. You don't want to just plateau and, I'm probably a depth guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm projected to maybe be a depth guy and maybe call up in the American League level. You want to make sure that you prove everybody wrong. And I think that if you're, well, first of all, you'll never know where they have you slotted at, but you kind of know where you're slotted at. But I'll tell you one thing, if you know that you're not in those top tier groups, then do the things that make you get in those top tier groups. And if you don't, then at the end of the day, there's no regrets and you did everything you can. That's just, you didn't pan out, right? It's not easy to be a National Hockey League player. It's not. And it's not like, oh, just do the right things and it will happen. No, there's a lot of factors into it. But the good thing is once you're in those pyramids, that means that you've done something right up to where you are today. And now it's what you do with it to climb up. And I always say the funnel, right? The funnel always gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and everybody always fall out of the funnel. So it's fun to see what the pyramid is, and it's fun to see where you're at in the pyramid.
I imagine it's more fun for some than others, but that's part of life, I guess. We can bring up the pyramid if we have it ready to go. I put 6 different tiers on it, and just to be specific about it, we only took players under 25 that have less than 15 NHL games. That would be mostly just to eliminate players like Sam Malinsky and Justus Annunen and Nikolai Kovalenko as well, because let's be honest, having those as prospects is kind of cheating at a certain point in your organization. So we only have players that, we can actually consider prospects, in my opinion, at the very least. We start at the bottom here. We're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on this tier because, if I'm honest, when you look at tier 6, this is mostly guys where, at least in my opinion, it's difficult to see a path for the NHL for them. That includes Zakar Bartikov, Andrei Buyalski, Maros Jedlishka, Sampo Ranta, Shamil Shmakov, and Ivan Yunin. Now, the 2 interesting names here are Jedlishka and Sampo Ranta. Jedlishka coming off of an injury that essentially held him out all of last season. There was some interesting stuff from him in the prospect face-off and otherwise. And then Sampo Ranta, a really weird case where he has NHL games with the Avs. His time in the NHL, he did not really look ready, but then ultimately decided to leave the NHL and go play over in Sweden. is there realistically any hope for someone like Aranta to come back to the NHL, or is that just a pipe dream?
It seems like a challenging path back, just to have made the commitment to move to Moto Hockey as young as he did. You know, there are players, because their Avs are scouting overseas and have a lot of European representation, that will still be following what he's doing overseas. But I think the greatest way to have made an impression would have been sticking around. So I don't know what the path back looks like for Sampo Ranta. And for what it's worth, he had an interesting time acclimating to the pro game. Like at the North American, like the American League level, it was good. Yep. But at the NHL level, the processing was challenging for him. And so that's the other part that I'm sort of leaving out of the equation that I think is challenging for Sampo Ranta to come back over and make an NHL impact, because that was the part of his game that I think needed to grow the most, and he has removed himself from the system that could help him the most.
Agreed.
Yeah, Jidlika, I think he can be, I think his model should be Ivan, right? Give and take, forget about the type of player. I'm talking about the situation. Make the best out of it, do something. Which it sounded like he was about to do last year, and then the injury slowed it down. But this is a guy that he should look at what happened to Ivan last year and try to duplicate that. Who knows where it's going to take him? Who knows where it's going to go? Who knows what's the ceiling, what's the floor with him? Not too sure, because again, we don't have a big sample of him. We liked him, like Rudo said, at the rookie face-off, but besides that, which there's not much to go on. As far as Sampo Ranta, for me, he's the typical guy that it looks like a player. You go watch a practice, you're like, wow, this guy's good. This guy can play. He looks the part. And I'll be very harsh when I say this, and I hate saying this. I think this is where he tops off the American League. I think at the NHL can't do it. If you're gonna, tell me that I got to give you a decision right now, I would tell you, he will never be able to process it in the NHL. It's not even a matter of, he needs reps or whatever. I don't think he's able. It's the National Hockey League. It is so fast. It is so much faster than the American League, and the American League's a great league. I think I've seen enough. I think coaches have seen enough where they in their mind, if I was his agent, I would have suggested to do what he did, which is, you'll probably have a better career if you go back overseas. That's what I would do. And like I said, no offense to the person, I don't know him. No offense to the player. I think that's where he topped off, was the American League. I don't think he's an everyday National Hockey League player. I think he's barely a call-up. And I think that the Avs see it that way, and I think that his representation probably sees it that way too. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they think he's getting screwed or whatever. I just don't think he's an NHL player, and I don't think he ever will
be. The definition of a player, all tools, no toolbox. His raw skills certainly has NHL caliber abilities, but look, you put a lot of players in open ice with nobody covering them, they can do stuff at an NHL level. You put a guy bearing down on them, things change pretty quickly.
Cronin described him as, a puzzle piece, or a puzzle with all the pieces that just couldn't quite come together. Because you're right, the physical tools are pretty impressive. He's a really heavy physical player with a lot of power in his stride.
Yep.
And has a great head on his shoulders too, like attitudinally. Also just a really great person, but it was just, everyone is saying it here, the processing was challenging for Sampo Ranta.
Yep. On Jedlichka's side, I think he's probably the most interesting one in this category. If you look 4 months down the line, maybe he gets an AHL deal or an ELC or whatever you want to call it. Maybe he just plays with the Eagles this year. If he does well at the AHL level, it wouldn't be hard to see him jump up a couple of tiers in this pyramid, as Eric, you were talking about before we started with the, hey, look, guys move up and down this thing quickly all the time. Jedlichka would be the one to watch for me there, assuming he can have a healthy season, just because we don't really know what he is. Certainly not in North America, at very least.
And if I can add one more thing to that, because you're bang on. And I think if you're the player, the best way to ascend, to go upwards in that pyramid, is to know where you're at. You know what I mean? And I think you have to have a fair evaluation of what you are and what you need to do to move forward. And I think he's that exact type of kid. Like we talked about him. I remember last year ran into him and got him an Uber or whatever it was. And you can tell this kid's sharp. You can tell this kid he's like a sponge. He wants to learn. And those, you're right. Those are the types of guys. He knows where he's at. He knows what he's up against. Wants to get to the top there, where there's no more echelons, to climb except, being an everyday NHLer. So I think he knows exactly where he's at. And I think he knows exactly what he wants to do. And you're right. This is the type of guy that could go and climb 2-3 steps there in a matter of like 6 to 8 months.
Could. Has to actually go out and do it still, but
yeah.
I hope he considers, like right now, he's committed to play in the Czech men's league next year. I hope he considers, though, making the North American transition, at 21 years old. It seems like a fine time to begin getting acclimated to North American ice and make that adjustment and play alongside Ivan.
And there were rumors last year before his injury that the Avs were looking for ways to keep him in North America. So
I think it's a real possibility, and it'd be a great next step for him.
Yep, agreed. That's tier 6. Those are way too small for me to read. So let me pull up my notes here, and I'll tell you the 10 people I put in tier 5 because I put a lot of people in tier 5 this time. All right. So this includes Lauka Cloutier, Max Curran, Christian Humphreys, Ivan, Taylor McCarr, Nikita Prishapov, Tori Pittner, Chris Romaine, and Matt Steinberg. This is essentially a list of a lot of the new guys drafted later in the draft, as well as some of the guys in previous drafts that maybe have been a little bit slower on their development path as far as Avalanche rights are concerned. When you look at these guys, I don't want to say never as far as their path to the NHL, like I might feel about some of the guys deeper on this lineup, but most of them probably still have a long way to go to realistically see them in an NHL game. The thing about this tier is you look at a Cloutier, you look at a Tori Pittner, you look at guys like Humphreys and Prishapov. There's a lot of room for movement out of tier 5. In previous years of the pyramid, there are guys that have 1 year in tier 5 and the next year they could be as high as tier 2. So guys in tier 5, it's still kind of figuring out who they are as prospects. I don't know, Eric. How many guys in these late round draft pick style of players really get opportunities?
It's funny because I was talking to someone today, and then they gave me the analogy like, yeah, you're drafting these guys, and you're really just getting the outside of the car, right? You're not getting the engine. You don't know the engine. You don't know what they're made out of, and all you're looking at just, it's a Buick, or it's but you don't really know what it is because you're not driving them, and I think that in that tier there, the best way to describe it is you don't really know what you got. You're bang on. Like you're juggling with that, and you're like, okay, what are these guys? What is Lauka Cloutier really gonna do? I'll use him for an example. Like really young, really raw, 17 years old. Like all you know is he's a goalie, right? That I'm talking about us as fans, and really the coaching staff here. Like the only one people that really starting to know, it's more like Frankie. That saw him a lot this year, and the goaltending development people like Billington, those guys, and that's why they decided to take a draft pick on him. Now, to what extent do you know what kind of engine do you have? I mean, the more you live with it, the more you're gonna deal with them on a daily basis here. How's he gonna react to his second year in Chicago in the USHL? How's he gonna react after that to move on to Omaha and NCAA there? A lot of steps, a lot of time needed, lots of self motivation, self evaluation on where you want to be. So a guy like that, yeah, I mean, it might take a while. It might take 5-7 years, before you. And again, he's 17 years old. You know what I mean? It's not that crazy. But there's a lot of guys in there that in that tier right there that probably can make the biggest jump in a matter of like 24 to 36 months. You know what I mean? Because, use Pittner, for example. I don't know. He's going to be, DU. Boo. Sorry, Megan. And then, he's going to DU. And then who knows what steps he's going to take. You know what I mean? And he, what is he, 5th rounder, whatever he was. Low, high risk. I mean, not a high risk pick. You know what I mean? Like, right shot defenseman, can develop smart. He's going to go with David Carl and the great coaching staff at, Denver Pioneers. And then where does he fit? What does he look like 36 months from now? So those guys have a great ability to jump up a couple steps on that ladder that you're looking at on that pyramid. And then there's a couple guys there that it's the law of averages. They'll die there. They'll never move from there. They are what they are, and you might even throw them down to tier 6. And for example, like you had what's his name, Buyalowski. I hate the names, but Buyalowski. That was at Vermont. That he transferred this year somewhere as a 5th year or something like that. But you'll probably never come out of that 6th tier or 5th tier. So yeah, law of averages. You're going to see some guys there take major steps. And then you're going to see guys that are absolutely that's where they top off.
It's how it works. We'll get Megan's thoughts and move into some guys that might actually be pushing for NHL jobs here. But if you have a pyramid of applications to get through for a job you're hiring for, make sure you get with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. You can ditch all of the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. So make sure you're getting over and getting with Indeed today for any of your hiring needs. And of course, to listeners of this show, you can get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show. Let them know that we sent you over there, this Avs podcast here at Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And once you've got your job posting all up on Indeed, make sure you're also hopping on with Circa Sportsbook to have a little bit of fun. A lot of our college guys out there at Circa today enjoying the Big 12 time interviewing, whatever it is that college football does. I don't really know. I don't really care. I'm too busy betting on Circa Sportsbook, which gives you the best odds out there. They don't mess with all the fanciness. They don't try to give you all these crazy boosts or anything. They just try to give you the best odds on lines of any of the sports books out there. So if you want to get with Circa and go get with all the smart bettors, make sure you go over to circasports.com and download the Circa Sportsbook app today. Of course, when you do gamble with Circa, Circa sports bets can only be made while physically located in the state of Colorado. Must be 21 or older. All rights reserved. Circa Sports Colorado encourages you to gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER or visit problemgamblingcolorado.org. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast as we continue our way through the prospect period. Megan, Tier 5, is there anything you want to specifically touch on?
Yeah, I think to Eric's point, too, they may share in this tier, but a lot of these players are at very different stages of their development. And so Taylor McCarr and Matt Steinberg in this tier kind of stand out as the players that have the most pressure on them in terms
Clock's shorter, for sure. Yeah,
exactly. That runway is a lot shorter for them. A lot more is known about them. You know, for Steinberg, he's made his pro debut already, and so his challenge right now is separating from his peers in the American Hockey League, and that's really challenging to do, to get those minutes. We've watched players like Sampo Ranta get buried in American League lineups. So it's a different sort of challenge than some of these players who just need to go to college and crush it. Like Chris Romain is an intriguing prospect. He's had maybe some shuffling where he has landed and is destined now for Ohio State. And a lot more just needs to be viewed to know what Chris Romain might become. And similarly for Taylor McCarr, he has very smartly elected to take the longer route because his path to the pros requires it.
Yep.
Whereas someone like Ivan on the younger side makes his pro debut in this last season, earns an NHL contract. He has a little bit more runway to play with than, say, a Taylor McCarr. But it does make the amount of pressure that each of these players face a little bit different. It presents unique challenges. And so I'm excited to see what McCarr does in his next year with Maine. And he talked a little bit about the decision at Dev Camp, and I think it was the right decision for his path to the pros because that is what his sights set on. And it was awesome to hear him talking about working with Andrew Cogliano over Dev Camp too, because it is someone he could really learn from. His path to the NHL is going to look different from Ivan Ivans. And Matt Steinberg, hopefully leaning on someone like Andrew Cogliano as well. There are going to be things that they have to do in this next year, especially Matt Steinberg playing another year with the Eagles, that I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that he gets an NHL debut, but it's a very short leash, too. You know, Sampo Ranta earned NHL games, too, and we're already discussing that his path back to the NHL looks pretty unlikely. Yeah. So it's a challenging tier for them to be in. For someone like Christian Humphreys, there's still so much runway left, too. Same with Cloutier, the goalie. So it's an intriguing tier. And as we move up, I think it starts to get a little clearer, or like they're more aligned in the stages in their development that they're in. But it is interesting how different it is in this one.
Certainly a lot of different question marks, but question marks nonetheless. And I don't want to be harsh, but the reality is of these two tiers, there's 15 names across these two tiers. If one of them plays NHL games, even semi-regularly for the Avs, it's a win for the organization. So it's really hard to make the NHL. Put it to you that way. I think we can move on to tier number 4 now and start getting into, maybe some of the more realistic prospects. Tier 4 is one where, look, I'll be honest, some of these guys are in tier 4 just because of pedigree, maybe being drafted a little bit higher than some of the other guys on this list. Sage Weinstein, the Avs actively sought out and gave a contract to. And then Trent Miner, the one who's really probably worked his way into this tier more than some of these other guys, as he's been in the organization for a while. But just to go over it, we have Jake Fisher, we have Sage Weinstein, we have William Zellers, and we have Trent Miner in this category. Let's be real. I don't know that any of these guys are particularly close to the NHL today. No matter how I maybe particularly feel about any of these guys, the Avalanche as an organization, in Weinstein's case, went out and gave him a contract. In Miner's case, have consistently been giving him more and more responsibility every year. And in the case of Fisher and Zellers, have been willing to spend higher round picks on these guys. So they at least see NHL upside in some of these players. But for them, I guess, what do the paths start to look like if these guys are going to push for an NHL job?
Well, for Trent Miner, it's to secure the net in Loveland and become the starting goaltender there. You know, for a 7th round, I believe, pick to even get a full-time American League goaltender out of the deal is not a bad result. And to his credit, too, that path for a goaltender always is a little bit long and winding. And let me see, how old is Trent Miner? 23. I think he's right at where he needs to be in terms of where a goaltender should be in that stage of their career. And the next step is just to make that net his own and not really allow for there to be too much division between who gets the starts. If they're pretty evenly split between him and a vet, I could see that happening. Sure. But it's his to lose at this point, because I think he hasn't always been given the fairest showings. Honestly, I think he's done everything asked of him through this point and made a really great case for him in this last year. He gets a little bit injured at the end of it, but it was otherwise his net. And so he did a great job of that. I think that's his path forward, which still requires, though, of course, another year in the American League before we're even talking about anything NHL related. And even then, the Avs seem to favor someone with a little bit more experience for like third string call-up options.
More of an Avs problem than a minor problem there, maybe. But.
Exactly. So I'm not necessarily even envisioning that in the next year, but he'll make a better case by assuming the net in Loveland. And then a player like Sage Weinstein, another young player with so much runway, like another years of junior eligibility. So his path forward is to just continue taking his time with it and continue mastering the level that he's at. As far as Fisher and Zellers, like Zellers, I think is one, all of these that kind of hinder on both of these tiers, the one below and right where they're at, just because I haven't seen enough of him. I think that once he gets to college, I'll start to be able to speak on it a little more clearly. And same for Jake Fisher, because Jake Fisher, the way that he plays hockey right now, you can see the Avalanche fit in a depth role someday. But you saw that in Matt Steinberg in college. That's exactly what he did in college and what he did well. And so there's a lot of layers ahead for even a Jake Fisher. He kind of has to surpass what Matt Steinberg has accomplished through this point, and Steinberg's still fighting to improve his ranking in these tiers.
And again, the margins of tier to tier are razor thin. You could certainly argue some guys should be swapped. As the person who put the list together, the reason I give Zellers an up, drafted a little bit higher than a lot of these guys. And I don't want to talk down about someone like Matt Steinberg, but the reality of prospect pools oftentimes is, guess what? William Zellers is the new shiny, and the shine of him, Matt Steinberg being the new prospect that has upside, has worn off a little bit as he now starts to grind through trying to earn more opportunity in a pro level. Sage Weinstein, literally on this tier just because he has a contract where a bunch of these other prospects don't. The Avs kind of went off the books and gave him one out of a prospect face-off, something that they don't normally do. But if he did something good enough in the Avs' eyes to earn that contract, I have to put him up a tier. Kind of my thought process in a tier like that. Eric, do organizations run into the new shiny problem? Do they maybe move on from prospects a little quicker than they should just because they get new batches in?
Well, I think you have to look at the longevity of, just look at coaching in the NHL. Like, oh my God, you don't win, you're gone, right? So it's the same thing with front office. I think we're lucky here in Denver. We've seen a lot of longevity, right, with Coach Bednar, and then C-Mac's been around and Joe's been around for a while now. So there's a little bit of stability, but it's not always like that. And you need results. And I think there's a fine line between being patient with players and moving on too quickly from them. And then, there is the new shiny toy aspect of it. It's life, right? It's human nature. I think Trent Miner, you were just talking about him. I love that. It's the hardest thing to do is put your head down and get the work done. Trent Miner, sees right now, it's like, oh, okay, I'm pretty solid right now in net. And then, the Avs are going to either sign a third goaltender or get someone on waivers or before the season starts. And all of a sudden it's like, oh God, you feel like you've been knocked down. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to keep your head down, go do the work, don't analyze. And it's the simplest thing to say, is to say don't analyze, but it's the toughest thing to do. It is hard not to analyze. It is hard to just look at your inside, your little bubble, and go do what you can do and control what you can control, which is, your mindset of being a goalie. That's an everyday goalie in the American League. It is hard, but he was at the bottom. He moved on to the next. He earned a new contract. Therefore, he's in that box right now. Yeah, to Megan's point, he probably hasn't had his fair shake, but life's not fair. Hockey's not fair, and I agree. That's where he's at. Somewhere, somehow, he's done the work because they gave him another contract. You know what I mean? This is the type of guy you can just move on after his ELC, and you know what I mean, and just kind of whatever. But yeah, I'm correct, right? They did give him a new contract, so it's like, they got it. I don't care if it's a qualifying offer; it's still an NHL contract. That means you're still alive to get to the top of that pyramid, to get to an NHL roster. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of mental work. We talked about it with Sly a couple of days ago. Goaltending, like those guys have a lot of pavement, a lot of runway to move, and you can be a little bit more patient with goalies, and they need a net, and sometimes the net is in the Utah, which was the case for him a little bit last couple seasons. Now, like I said, I don't know him. Sounds like a great kid, but he can't get down on himself when they go get an extra, because they will go get another goalie. It's not if, it's when, for all the reasons, because he doesn't have the experience. He's not a number 3 goalie in the NHL. If something happens, he's not ready. That's not his fault. He's just not ready to be put in that situation to go between the pipes at the National Hockey League level. He's not. Now, with that said, what you can do is prepare yourself to be ready to go. And if there is an injury, which there will be, it's just life, then that third goalie goes on, and then you get the pipes in the American League. You're ready to go, and you haven't been just moaning and being mad for a few months because your playing time's not there. Now, if you just control what you can control, you're ready to go, you're a great teammate, and all of a sudden your opportunity comes, whoops, now you're more ready for it. So he's a typical guy that I wouldn't push aside, and obviously, the Fisher is a little intriguing. He's a little more shiny maybe than his roommate Pittner, for whatever reason. He's different position. He's a different type of draft pick. I mean, where was he just a couple rounds before? Whatever. I don't have the list in front of me, but it's a little shinier. We'll see what he's going to do. University of Denver, again, great program. I hate to say it, but those guys they're great coaching staff, great place to develop and to become a pro. And it's the same with Zellers. Like, we didn't see him last week, but who knows? Not a big guy. I don't mind that. It's okay. But he's going to North Dakota straight, out of the NTDP. It's a big jump. We'll see. College hockey is a good freaking league. It's a good league. So we'll see what he can do with, the type of career that he's at. He's just scratching the surface right now. He's just starting. So who knows how he's going to do. But, and then Weinstein, like you said, yeah, I agree. And it's like, great. Now it's what's next, You want to stay in that plateau right there? You want to move forward?
So if you're a bunch of hockey dorks who are sitting around talking prospects like us, or maybe you're talking lineup or whatever it might be, make sure you're chilling while you're doing it. Crack a Coors Light open and enjoy your time doing whatever it is you're talking about. It doesn't even have to be hockey. I'm sure plenty of people this time of year are talking college football rosters or regular football rosters. Or, look, the Olympics is like 2 weeks away. So, I don't know. The U.S. men's basketball team, they beat Canada, right?
Soon we'll be able to talk about hockey rosters in the Olympics. It'll be great.
Yeah, like 2 years from now.
Soon.
I mean, we can talk about the Four Nations rosters. We'll probably do that in a couple weeks. But anyway, when you're doing it, make sure you got a Coors Light in your hand. It's the beer I choose when I chill. So go get yourself some, brewed right here in Golden, Colorado, and you can get it delivered right to your front door when you go to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Thanks to Instacart, you can get all of that delicious Coors Light delivered to your front door. Of course, please party responsibly. Golden, Colorado, Coors Brewing Company. Make sure you go check them out. And while drinking beer and enjoying yourself is a fun time, you also got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, especially on the mental side. That's where BetterHelp comes in. A common misconception about relationships is that they have to be easy to be right. But sometimes the best ones happen when both people put in the work to make them great. Obviously, BetterHelp is a great way to go and get therapy. It's entirely online. You don't have to go anywhere to do it, and it's super fast and easy to get in on. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch your therapist at any time. If you decide you want to try a different one for no additional charge, they can get you in very quickly, usually within a week. So make sure you become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit BetterHelp.com/DNVR today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DNVR to jump in with BetterHelp today. All right, getting back to the prospect pyramid here and getting into tier 3. These three top tiers are the players that, if you're more interested in guys that could potentially have impact for the Colorado Avalanche this year or next, you should focus in on the top 3 tiers of this pyramid. A lot of the guys below this we've talked about have maybe pretty long paths, but starting with tier 3, these are guys that should be pushing for NHL jobs, and some of them likely will get NHL roles today. You don't have to. If they can see it, it's fine. Tier 3 includes Chase Bradley, Jean-Luc Foudy, Oscar Olausson, and, of course, Andre Pavel. For the record, Jason Poland eliminated. Too old to be on the pyramid.
Eliminated.
Yeah.
Too old.
Doesn't make the pyramid because he's too old. But you look at these guys, Foudy and Olausson, if you follow Avs prospects, are pretty known quantities at this point as they continue to try and get over that hump of making an NHL roster more often than kind of being a call-up level guy. Pavel, we've talked about, maybe the guy on this list that makes more sense as a bottom 6 player. And then Chase Bradley jumping right into the AHL as out of college with a contract from the Avs. I don't know. Let me ask you guys. Do you think the Avs see Chase Bradley as a legitimate call-up option this season?
Not how even Wilsey talked about him. Just to be direct, it sounded like he really needs to solidify an American League job.
Sure.
And that's the conversation right now. And I think that's fair because even though Jason Poland's too old to make this list, he still exists.
He does.
And so he's still going to be competing with the likes of Jason Poland, Pavel, Steinberg, so Oscar Olausson, Foudy in that mix too somewhere. I think that is not the conversation or the room that we're in right now with Chase Bradley.
All right. Fair enough.
Here's what I'll say about Bradley. Not knowing him, obviously, just seeing him, not knowing him as a player. Saw him play twice this year, and honestly, I don't remember. Wasn't watching him. I watched collegiate game that he was in, and then watching different guys, and he's not a guy and that doesn't mean that he wasn't good. It just wasn't. Leisurely watching, the game and not like notes in front of me and looking at guys and with that said, again, development camp. This is the type of guy though that you're gonna see, and from the get-go, when I say get-go, is rookie face-off. Bit older. He's played against bigger guys, men. The last couple of years in college, and not in the USHL or junior hockey, or he seems to have some good speed. He's got some decent hands. Now at the NHL level, I think he's a crusher. I believe. I don't think he's a rusher. Boy, would I'd love to get my hands on a guy like that, and then just talk to him and say, "Hey, listen, it's very simple. You want to make it? This is how you do it." But he's the typical guy, like Megan just said, like you just said. Brian Wilson said, "Oh, let's see if he can secure a job at the American League level." Well, I'm going to compare him to a guy. You're talking to him. Started the season out of college as a draft pick, and went to the American League, and really thought the American League was going to be a cakewalk. And I think I had 3 points in my first period. Long story short, I ended up with one shift in the third period, and we won the game. And I was like, whatever, third star, I'm the man. This American League is easy. Whatever. I'm the cat's ass. And this Mark Crawford has no idea what he's talking about, whatever. And then the next game came around and didn't play much. And by the third game, I was a scratch. And I was a scratch 8 times in the first 11 games. And when I say scratch, is not even dressed, right? It is tough. It is tough mentally, and then it's tough but you have to figure out what you are. And for him, that's why I say, God, I'd love to get my hands on him. Like, if I work with the Avs again, which I don't want to, that's not what I'm saying. But it's such an easy conversation, but it's a hard concept to grasp. Easy conversation to have, hard concept to grasp. And it's like, buddy, you got to know what you are and go and do it. And you're a corridor player. You got some speed. And, this is the type of guy that can move up those echelons because he is not 18. And because he can show he's kind of an unknown commodity, he can show very quickly, very quickly. Megan said that earlier about Sampo Ranta. Quickly, after a few games, you're typecast like you can't play. Right or wrong, that's life. And that's life in the NHL. I mean, honestly, coaches don't have time to wait, don't have time to babysit. If a guy doesn't grasp it, then I don't know. He might never grasp it. And yeah, some teams have been wrong, but a lot of times teams are right. You know what I mean? There's a reason why all of a sudden guys are not in the NHL. But yeah, there's always that odd guy that all of a sudden makes it. But Bradley, like if he can go, like I said, by the end of my first year from being a scratch, I got called up in the NHL and I was in that playoff run with the Maple Leafs, and all those guys that were playing ahead of me, that were way ahead of me in that pyramid right there, I blew by because of understanding what I was. And again, we'll talk about a guy right after, maybe Olofsson. It's an identity thing. You have to know what you are. If you're in that column of that pyramid right there, in order to get out of there, you have to have an identity. I think Chase Bradley, if he can get it done, he can get there.
So a few things I wanted to touch on with Bradley. Number one, recent history in the Avs organization. College UFAs have gotten opportunity in the NHL. Poland, Pavel both played at least one NHL game last year. Probably in a higher tier than I would put Chase Bradley, but guys like Ben Myers and Sam Malinsky also got NHL opportunity. On the other side, maybe the guy most comparable to Bradley and Logan O'Connor, it did take a couple years of AHL playing before he really started to get those NHL roles and opportunities. The thing with Bradley, though, is I get what came out of the mouths as far as the Avs organization is saying, but if you don't believe a guy can make your AHL roster, why are you giving him an ELC?
I agree, and I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to use Logan, LOC. I'm convinced LOC is a better NHLer than he was an American Hockey League player. He is. He's a better NHLer than he was than he was a college hockey player. Sorry, that's what Logan did. He was an okay, college hockey player. He was a good college player. Got way more value today in the National Hockey League than he ever did at the collegiate level. And it's because when he turned pro, he really knew his identity. He really knew where he was going to fit in those boxes. Once you look at a pyramid, you want to get out of the pyramid to get into the boxes, which are what? Lineup boxes. Where do I fit in the lineup? That's how I keep climbing. And then this guy was brilliant. And I know I had a conversation with him that one summer. And it was like, he told me, don't worry. I know what I am. And if I do that, I'm going to make it. And I'm like, buddy, you're going to make it. Not only that, if it don't work here, if it does not work here, you're not going to clear waivers. Because guys at the American League level press boxes that go around the freaking games, and they're like, oh, this guy can play. And trust me, he wasn't going to clear waivers. So that year that he made the Avs roster, it was his time. It was time for him to stick. And if they sent him down, he wasn't freaking staying here as a Colorado Avalanche. Remember, he was gone. Because I can tell you that a lot of teams, including Calgary Flames, we're going to claim him. So you have to know what you're at, and you're right about Bradley. If you don't believe that he can become one of those guys, then you don't waste an ELC on him. But yes, I agree with what Wilsey said, like to Megan's point. Like, yeah, I mean, who knows if he can stick around. Again, they're unknown. They're unknown. But like I said, that's why I'm like, God, I'm hoping, which I really like. He's a poor man in the sense that he's younger than Poland was last year. You know what I mean? Like, I do believe Bradley's a bit younger. Maybe I'm wrong, but again, don't have the birthday in front of me, so I shouldn't talk like that. But Poland, in the sense, I really saw something there, got injured, and I was like, God. I would have liked to seen what he could have done, not get injured there in rookie camp and really start on the right foot. Who knows what he could have done? But, again, Poland's not on this list, but I don't throw him on the left field. I agree why he's not on the list, but I think it's a name to keep an eye out. And Megan's right when, for a guy like Bradley and, a guy like Poland is there in the way, you know what I mean? And if you're Bradley, you want to make noise, you got to show that you got to beat out those guys, the Steinbergs and, Polands and guys like that. But there's a way to do it, and it's full throttle. And again, I'll say it again. You have to know what you are as a player.
And I've been hard on Chase Bradley. I do want to say the thing about him just shown in development camp that could separate him from his peers is his skating.
Yep.
I think that he also was another player with a powerful stride and a powerful wrister and tight. If these kinds of things allow him to separate from his peers at the American League level, there's absolutely reason for intrigue. I feel I've been a little bit hard on him, and it's interesting too, the conversation about why would the Avs give him an ELC right out the gate. And I think that Wilsey has to discuss it as an opportunity that has not yet been earned to create competition. You know, he does
Sure.
need to go out there and earn that role.
Of course.
It's really the only way for him to even enter NHL conversations down the line.
Yep. All right.
And can I just have one more thing? Sorry, like Logan. I remember talking to some Avs guys because when Logan came in, I just left the Avs and still befriend those people and and I remember to a couple Avs. I won't say who, but like amateur guys, and they're like, oh, whatever, college free agent, yeah, whatever. You huff and puff, and it's like, oh, what's wrong? It's like, well, I mean, because they don't like that because it's like it's showing that you missed out on drafting the guy when he was draft eligible. You know what I mean? And again, when you draft the guy, it's because you draft the guy. Now you want to show everyone, especially in the organization, that job justification, right? Oh, he deserves a contract, but we don't have enough contracts anymore because we gave it to this freaking college free agent. But you know what I mean? So it's funny how internally there's always those displeasure of depending on what department you're in. You know what I mean? And I think Bradley fits right into that freaking ball, just like Logan did when he joined the Avs.
Yeah, as opposed to a Foudy or an Olausson who, look, would not surprise me if either or both of those guys get NHL games this year again. But when you have a Poland, when you have a Pavel, when you have a Chase Bradley, guys that make sense in a bottom six role, it becomes harder to see the paths for a Foudy or an Olausson, at least in the Avalanche organization. Now, that isn't to say 6 months from now, Jean-Luc Foudy could be playing in Anaheim's lineup every single night if a trade happens. This is just a hypothetical, but my point being is not that I believe that both Olauskin and Foudy could find NHL roles. I'm just not sure that they fit in Colorado right now.
And it's, in talking about like, okay, these are some things that Chase Bradley does well. The calling card for Foudy is his skating in a different way. He's so quick north-south. He's gotten better within traffic skating too. And Oscar Olausson, obviously the shot is NHL caliber and has been for some time. He's had trouble utilizing it as much as he should. And he's had to try to build in other aspects of his game to become a little bit more well-rounded. But both belong in this tier because they are a cut above the rest with where they're at right now. What's challenging, though, is the role that's available to them doesn't really fit what their claim to fame has been so far. And so it's been challenging for both of them to try and adapt to playing lower in the lineup in the NHL compared to the top 6 minutes that they play in Loveland. And for someone like Olausson, with uncertainty around Nichushkin, there could be opportunity for him to get second, third line minutes, but it's a short leash. And what's unfortunate for both of these players is both have missed significant time due to injury. That was true of Sam Paranta, too. I want to shout out Sam Paranta missing a really significant year in his transition to pro hockey as well due to injury. And it can be detrimental to what the NHL team thinks of them because they just have limited viewings. And so they both have a really big mountain to climb ahead of them because it does feel kind of make or break. Do you make sense in Colorado? Can you impact our NHL team right now? And with the way both of these players bill and play, this offseason is going to be incredibly important for them. For Olausson, too, who still wasn't 100% back to game form, it stinks for him. There's a lot of work ahead, and I like both these players. I like the head that they have on their shoulders, so I'm not writing them off just yet. But they're competing with players who have built in parts of their game, to your point, are already designed for a bottom six role. And that's kind of all that's available for them long term.
Yep.
Well, if I can talk about Oscar, like the one thing Oscar has got is it's time. You know, he went in because of the European rule, right? That he can go play as a teenager in the American League level. So, you know, it's a little bit like Kaut, right? You know, again, we all know where Kaut ended. You know, Kaut couldn't play in my book. I don't think he had the head to the decision making process. It wasn't youth in his game. It wasn't. It just. I think that's where he topped off. He wasn't going to be a good NHLer. He was more suited for the American League or overseas, and that's exactly where he's at now. Olofsson, I don't want to write him off because he's still young. I do believe that there's an identity problem there, and I don't want to use the T word, you know, because it's like, man, he's still young, and the T word meaning a tweener. You know what I mean? Like, is he just like a good, you know, good player in the American League? He's just not good enough for the NHL. Like, I don't know. He's a fit guy. He's a fit guy in the puzzle. He would have to be the perfect fit, like you just said. Is, you know, Natushkin's not. I don't know, but that's how he would make it to the NHL. I think it's a long shot still. I'm not here to bag on the pick, but it's a long shot. Where Foudy, again, the injury, and if I'm Jean-Luc Foudy, the non-French guy with the French name, I would definitely speak to him, sit him down, and say, hey, listen, if I'm like part of the American League staff, right, Schneekloth, or you know, which they get their hands on him every day, and who knows, is it going to be Dan Heino? Is it going to be, you know, whatever that's going to be, what's going to be there? Sure sounds like it, but I mean, man, it's like, hey, let's make a deal together. Let's make you a player. And when I say let's make you a player, listen what I just said. I didn't say let's make you a Colorado Avalanche. Let's make you a player. And Mark Crawford made that deal with me. And again, I'm talking about my days in the American League because it's kind of what we're talking about, prospects and how to become a full-time NHLer or even a higher prospect than you are in that pyramid. Like, so let's make a deal. Well, you want to play in the NHL? And the answer is yes. Well, you're going to do what I'm going to tell you. And don't argue me. I know what it takes. I know what you need to do to be a player. And if it doesn't fit here, because like Rudo just said, it's not your time with the Colorado Avalanche. That's okay. Mine was with the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's the oldest team in hockey. They're all like freaking ancient. They were a great team, but they were old. There was no room, you know. But there might be room somewhere else. And if I look back, like I said, in my mind, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. They'll make room for me. And then next thing you know, I was telling all my friends and teammates, oh, we got to do it. You know, like they're right. You know, it's not just about the parent team. There's a lot of people in the stands at every American League game and, you know, from different teams. And you're talking about probably a dozen teams a night in the American League watching your games. And, you know, hey, you could be part of those teams. You know, always thinking, no, I'm going to make it. Next thing you know, I'm the one that ended up playing for a different team, and it worked out because they didn't lie to me. Like, they were like, you're going to be a player, but sometimes it might not be with the parent team. But guess what? You're still valuable because you were used as an asset in a trade or whatever it is. And that's what you have to understand. It's a business, but you have to go do what's needed to ascend in those pyramids. And if you don't, you will die there in that tier you're in, and that's okay. And if
I need to move on to period 2, on to tier 2 right now because we're running out of time.
Sorry, tier 2. I can go on and on.
Tier 2 is, in my opinion, other than the guy at the top, the guys that have the highest ceilings in the Avs organizational prospect pool. That being Sean Behrens, Mikhail Gulyayev, and Ilya Nabokov. Second-round picks, first-round picks. Behrens probably the one closest to the NHL as he's going to play his first full year in the AHL this season. There's a world where he gets called up to the NHL this year. I don't really see it just because of guys like Sam Malinsky, Jacob McDonald, Callie Rosen, probably all ahead of him in the call-up list, at least to start the season. But a big year for him to prove that he can do it at the pro level day in and day out. Gulyev, you already know me. I love him. Still in the KHL, going to be in the KHL for a couple more years. But outside of Barron's, the only other defensive guy that I see as top 4 potential in the Avs organization. Not that I don't like guys like, I think Torrey Pittner can be an NHLer, but maybe more of a bottom pairing guy. And then Nabokov, their second round pick from this year, de facto becomes their best goalie prospect, given that Annunen has now graduated. Plus, has already proven at the pro level he's a pretty good prospect. Another guy of just, okay, when do we get him to North America, and what does that look like? So, to me, these are the types of guys that if you want to be a successful organization developing prospects, you need to get NHLers out of this tier.
And the plan with Barron's has always been a patient one.
Yeah.
You know, I think he would have liked to consider going pro after his sophomore year, but he needed to have a procedure, and the Avs had him do his junior year. He gets another national title out of it, and it was always a part of the plan from the Avs side. I think a full year in the American League is also part of his plan. There's no reason to abandon that plan, and it would be detrimental to Barron's to start skipping ahead, cutting corners. It's just not necessary with Barron's. Nabokov being a little bit older and kind of jumpstarts where he's at in the goaltending pipeline. And then Gulyev kind of similarly to Barron's in knowing that he is going to be playing overseas for a couple seasons. Another player with a patient plan by design. There's no need to jump ahead. And I think this sets all of these players up to have more likely NHL success than some of these other tiers. And it's relied on patience.
For sure.
I'll go quick. I got one word for that tier, then one word for the next tier. This tier is, you talked about it earlier, shiny toys. Yeah, it is, and forget about Barron's. Like, you know what? He's got two championships in 3 years. He's more ready, so he is considered a shiny toy for me. The other two, is a first round pick. Who knows? He's in Russia, but he's going to be given every opportunity to make them look good with that pick. Same with Nabokov. He's not a first-round pick, but he is a first pick. He is the first pick of that draft for the Avalanche. I call that shiny toys.
Yeah, for sure. These are the guys that you absolutely should care about this season. And I get it's going to be hard for the average guy to watch the KHL stuff, but at very least keep an eye on Barron's in the AHL this year. And then the guy at the top is Cal Ritchie. I really don't think we have a ton to say about him in this show just because he's separated so much from the rest of the Avalanche prospect pool, especially this offseason. We're already talking about him as a guy who may legitimately make the Avalanche lineup. And that's why, for me, in this show, yeah, he's at the top of the list. But the conversation about Cal Ritchie really starts in training camp to see where, if realistically, he can make the NHL. He's just that far ahead of everyone else in this list. So
I agree. I mean, if I can jump in, my word is silver spooner. He's a silver spooner. That's what you call that in the NHL world. And there's no offense to that. I'm not being rude when I say that. I used to call Adam Denmark silver spooner because he never played one game in the American League. So all the respect in the world. But he will be given every opportunity in the world. What he does with the opportunity, I don't know. But his opportunity is going to come way easier than everybody else in that tier for all the reasons, because he is shinier, because he is a silver spooner, because he is a first-round pick, and he's a guy that slipped through the draft because of his injury, and now he's that far ahead of everybody else. Let's see where he goes. But, yeah, silver spoon, run with it. Run with it.
Hope he does. Anything else we want to add to the pyramid? No? We're good? All right. Then we are going to wrap up today's show. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. That is the full Avalanche prospect pyramid for now. Ask again in 6 months, and it'll probably look completely different. So that's the way it goes sometimes. But we hope y'all enjoyed it. Make sure you keep an eye out on the website, thednvr.com. Our Avalanche Takeovers tickets should be going up tomorrow morning, I believe. So if you wanna be part of our takeovers, if you want to come ride the bus with us, enjoy a game with us, get some free beers, make sure you keep your eyes out on the website for that. Of course, like and subscribe here on YouTube. Go check out all our other YouTube content. I should have a short drop-in later today talking about some of the things the Avs still need to do this offseason. We've got a ton more content coming your way. So we appreciate y'all. Check us out on Spotify if you're more of a podcast person, and we'll talk to you Tomorrow, mailbag. Go get your questions in.
We all silly like the mayor.
Sorry, Tiff. I thought I was by myself here in a dungeon in the corner, and then